Hey there, today we're going to have a look at this Sharp PC6500 laptop. It's pretty old, it's totally dead. Can we get it working again? Why don't you stick around and find out. Welcome to the basement. So there's very little information about the 6500 on the internet. From what I can find, it's an early 90s machine. It's either a 286 or a 386, so pretty early on. There's no mouse pointer or trackball or anything on it, so obviously probably not designed for Windows. But it's a pretty cool machine. It's actually quite small for the era. I'd be really interested to see if we can actually get it going. When I picked it up, it was dead. I've plugged it in a few times and there's just nothing. So you hit the power, no lights, nothing. I'm going to show you a bit around it and then we'll pull it apart and see if there's anything obvious inside that we can fix to get this thing going again. So there's the branding, Sharp PC6500. And if we have a look underneath, we can see that its actual designation is PC6541. But if I do a Google search on that particular number, I just get like organizers or calculators. There's nothing that comes up about this particular computer. If I do a search on the 6500, then I do get a couple of images, but just stuff that was for sale. There's not really a whole lot of information about them, unfortunately. So while we're on the bottom here, we also have the battery compartment, which we can unlock and then take the hatch off. And of course, we're going to have a NiCad battery, and it looks okay. It's not terribly swollen or anything, but we can see in here there's a little bit of just corrosion happening on these contacts, but nothing too major, so I don't think this is going to be our issue with it not working. And also on the bottom, of course, we've got our little feet to change the typing angle. What's quite interesting on this machine, there's no catch on the front, but the catches are on the side here, so you've got to slide them forward, one on each side, and then you can lift the screen open. Now, just looking at the screen, so it has an interesting switch here, standard or reverse, and I'm assuming that just swaps the polarity, I suppose, of the screen. And we have our contrast and our brightness controls here, which tells me it's a backlit screen. But unless we can get the machine running, we won't know for sure. Here on the main part of the machine, we've got our on-off switch, which of course is not powering it on at the moment. And we have, this is a hatch here, which I reckon is probably for RAM to access. We've got a range of indicator lights across here. And we've got this grey on grey keyboard, which feels really nice actually. It's a really nice action on this keyboard, feels good. Got function key down here, we've got arrow keys. But like I said before, there's absolutely no mouse pointing device on this machine. So whether it wasn't designed for graphical user interface or it maybe just shipped with a mouse, who knows. Okay, over on this side we've got a couple of blanked out hatches. One blanking plate is missing, but there's nothing in there, so presumably for a modem or similar. And if we have a look on the other side, of course, we've got our standard 3.5-inch floppy drive, which would be pretty common on machines of this era. Over on the back, we can see the bit of damage that this machine has. This is the only damage I can see so far. Just a bit of case that's been broken out next to these screws and a crack that runs around it here. Little hatch here, we can have a look inside. We've got some dip switches, again not sure what they do, I'll leave them alone for now. We've got our CRT, so it can take an external screen, assume VGA. We've got a serial port, good for plugging in a mouse, and we've got our parallel port for printers and what have you. And of course, where we plug our power in over here. Now, like I mentioned before, it doesn't work. I've actually got a power adapter here, which is outputting 15 volts. So if I chuck my multimeter on there, we can see we're getting 15 volts off this power adapter, which is what this machine takes. So if I plug that 15 volts into the back and hit the power button, oh, well, that's the first time that's happened. Okay, so it's turning on. And I saw something on the screen for a second. I can hear the hard drive. Oh, this is a turn of events. So we've even got some lights here. We've got a caps lock, we've got power. The screen's not doing anything anymore. Looks a bit dead. Well, that's a good sign. So we've got some sort of life happening here. Right, well, that changes things a little bit. I'm going to connect it to an external monitor. So I've plugged it into an external display there. I'll connect power again. I want to try and boot it into BIOS so I can see what sort of specs it has. So let's open it up and have a look. But before we try and switch it on, let me tell you about today's sponsor, PCBWay. When it comes to doing your next project, you can either do it the wrong way or the PCB way. That's right, PCBWay has everything you need to create your next project. So much more than just PCBs. They also do sheet metal fabrication, 3D printing, metal printing, CNC machining. You name it, they can do it. Everything you need for your next project can be found at PCBWay. So if you need to know which way to go with your next project, it's PCBWay. Kind sponsor of today's video. Okay, everything's set up. I will now flick it on and hopefully it works again. Yep, something's happening. Yes! Excellent. Press F1 to continue, press F2 or enter to run the setup program. Let's hit enter. The real-time clock lost power, check some error. Alright, let's see if we can find out what the specs are on this machine. We've got a 12 megahertz CPU, so that's telling me it's probably a 286. We can see that our BIOS is from 91. So yeah, pretty early on. Let's have a look at the next page. So we can see here it does have a VGA screen. Next page. And this is to do with the serial ports and things. So it doesn't tell us what processor in there, but I'm going with 286 given the speed of 12 megahertz. I'm going to try now to hit escape and see if it actually boots into DOS. Let's try that now. Here we go, 80286. So yes, it is a 286 machine. And let's just hit F1 to continue. Password lost, press any key to continue. I don't know what that means. I can hear the hard drive working. Bad or missing command interpreter. I'm not sure what that means. So funnily enough, when I come to film a video on this machine, it starts to work. I've tried to turn it on quite a few times off camera in the lead up to filming this, and it's always just been a dead machine. So it doesn't really change our plans too much. I mean, it's nice that it's decided to suddenly start working when it's being filmed, but we still have to pull it apart and have a look inside because this screen is still dead. Nothing's happening on the screen. If I flick it on, we can see there the screen kind of lights up for a second and then gone. Nothing there. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there. It could be a dodgy lead to the screen, or it could be capacitors somewhere in the machine. Who knows? What I'm going to try first though is there's those dip switches on the back, if you remember. I'm going to try them in different positions and see if that changes anything. I know on some of the older machines that will determine whether you have an external or internal screen working. So I'll try that first and see if that helps. So currently it's set to have dip switch 3 on. So let's try them with all of them off first. Right, well it's making a high-pitched squealy noise, but the screen is still not working. I can see the backlight's on, so that's not really the issue. That's just the data getting to the screen. Alright, I'll try the next sequence. Okay, I've run through all of the possible permutations with the 4 dip switches, and the only thing I discovered is that on some of the combinations the backlight's on and some the backlight is off. So I guess it has something to do with the screen, but it certainly didn't make the screen magically start working. So yeah, still have to pull it apart, see what's wrong with it. Why don't we do that now, see what's inside. First of all, we want to remove the battery. That's done, and we'll remove these 2 screws here, which I believe releases the keyboard. Nope, maybe it's this one as well. Let's try that one. Yep, and that's got it, so keyboard should lift out. So we're getting our first look down into the machine. I quite like this strip across the top here where you can put your little shortcuts on there for your function keys. Wow, so annoyingly the screws are all different lengths, like quite different. So I've stuck them on a bit of tape in the order that they've come out of the back of the machine, so I know where they all go. Okay, with all the screws out, let's look at that, come straight off. No plastic clips here to be catching it, and it's stuck with this lead here. Is that a plug? Yes it is, so let's undo that. Bottom case off. Great, and we're getting a look at the packaging of this machine. So let's get this main board out next. Disconnect the hard drive. So just 2 screws holding in the floppy drive. Now I don't think there's any more screws to take out. Let's try and work this off. There we go. Let's have a look here. We've got our VGA. Pull that out. And on this side we've got a power supply, I think. Pull that out. And there we have it, our mainboard and floppy drive. Let's set them aside. Let's pull the hard drive out next. One hard drive, it is a Toshiba branded hard drive. Doesn't say what capacity it is, but it's probably not much if this is a 286 from 91. Okay, here we have the power supply section, so let's remove that next. This could be the issue why our screen isn't working, perhaps. So that's our little power supply unit. Let me pull this apart and see if there's any capacitors in here we need to replace. And if we have a look on here, we can see that this power board has a range of capacitors. I believe that these are polymer capacitors, so I'm not suspecting anything to be wrong with those, but these certainly, electrolytic capacitors, most certainly have something wrong with them. In fact, if we have a look at some of these here, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but that looks like corrosion already around these, so no doubt these have leaked. Now while we're looking at possible capacitor replacements, here's the main board, and again we've got those same surface mount electrolytic capacitors here. I'm going to replace them as well, and just looking closely, it does look a little bit corrosion-y around the base of them here, so no doubt that these have either dried up or leaked and need replacing, so I'll add them to the list. Okay, one more circuit board in the base of the computer. Right, let's have a look here. So this board has all of our status or warning lights on it, and it also has a couple of surface mount capacitors, and what do we see here but another surface mount capacitor that's not mounted anymore. So definitely part of our issue. Whether it fixes the screen or not, don't know. Hopefully, but who knows until we order another one, put it back on and get that fixed. So yep, it's another case of the capacitor plague affecting a machine. I'll order all these capacitors in, replace them, see if it makes any difference to this machine. Great, so a couple of weeks have passed and now we have all of our components we need. So let's get soldering. Okay, I've cobbled it back together enough to turn it on. I still haven't sort of fully put it back together, but all the circuit boards are connected. I've connected the power, moment of truth. Alright, so the backlights come on. I don't know if you can see that. But there's still no text coming up on that screen. Rats. Okay, so there's one more thing I can try. It's time to open up the display. Okay, in behind the display we've got these 9 capacitors down here, and unfortunately the only other ones I could find are way bigger, so yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to actually fit them in there. Interesting. Let's see what we can do. Okay, I've desoldered all of the capacitors along this row here. These are the originals, tiny little ones. These are the ones I bought to replace them, and you can see that they're way too big, and we're going to have a real issue trying to fit them in. Thankfully, in my pile of stuff, I found these ones, which are the same value, but they are way closer to the original size, and I reckon we can squeeze these in here underneath the circuit board. So we'll carry on putting these smaller ones in and see if that fixes our problem. Okay, she was a tight squeeze, but we've got them all in there, and hopefully this fits back in again. Yes, just. So that's good, that's a good solution. Well, let's see if that actually solves the problem. I'll put this back together and we'll turn it on. Okay, I'll carefully turn it on and we'll see if we get anything on the screen. Backlight's on. Oh, it's not looking promising, is it? Still nothing on the screen. So those capacitors didn't help. So the last thing left to try is perhaps the most obvious thing that I should have tried first. But I'm going to test the continuity in the cable going from the graphics processor here through to the screen. Well, nothing wrong with that cable. That's it, I'm officially out of ideas, not sure what to do now. Okay, the machine's all back together, and guess what? The built-in LCD still doesn't work. Sometimes things just don't go your way, and that's life. You've been in the basement, have a great day.